downtown Montreal in one of the most expensive areas of the city in a pretty swanky little condo. At the time, I was really only focused on making money and spending money, and so were all the friends that I had in my life at the time. For the entire first year that I was living at that condo, there were problems. The neighbors were always partying. My unit was right above the gym, and the way that the punching bag was hooked up, all I could hear when I went to bed at night was people punching the bag and the chain rattling in the floor. People down the hall were also partying. People from above my terrace were throwing their cigarette butts onto my terrace. It was just constant stupidity. And the building manager was not a nice person. The employees didn't like her either. She would never uphold any of the rules or punish any of the people that were causing problems in the building. So after the first year, when my lease was up, I broke my lease and I planned to move to another swanky, expensive condo down the street. I knew that moving into another expensive condo was a bad idea because constantly trying to keep up with these bills was extremely stressful, and I really hated my job. I just thought that I had to keep up this lifestyle. Looking back, it's hard to understand my state of mind back then because I could have made so many different decisions, but it was like I had mental blocks. So the time comes when I'm supposed to be moving into this new condo down the street, and everything was set up. My current lease was already broken, so I couldn't go back on that and stay where I was, nor would I want to, because it was just developing into a huge nightmare. And the movers were coming, everything was packed, everything was set to go. And a couple days before I had to move, I went to go pick up the keys. Because it was a new building, I was able to get the keys before moving day. But when I went to go meet the manager to pick up the keys, he decided to extort me. He handed me 2 contracts, papers this thick, and told me that if I didn't sign them, that I wouldn't get the keys and he wouldn't let me move in. This was extortion. I even called, we have something in Quebec called the Régie de Logement, I think it's called. It's like an association that protects tenants. And I called them and they told me as well. They're like, no, he's not allowed to do that. That's illegal. But it's not a criminal legal thing. It's a civil legal thing. So all I could do was go through the motions, show up on the first, and if he didn't let me in, then I could take him to court. Which puts me in a really bad situation because where am I going to live and where am I going to put all my stuff? It's just ridiculous. So knowing this, I had a few days to try to figure out what I was going to do. I thought about all kinds of things that I could do, but in the end, what happened was I ended up calling my mother, who at the time I was kind of talking to on a semi-regular basis, because at the time I didn't understand that she was so toxic, because my father was so toxic that I blamed him for all the toxicity, and so did she. My mother told me to move back home, which she had told me many times in my life, and it was always a trap. And yet here I am fulfilling the same cycle again, where I told her that I didn't want to move back and live with my abusive father. And she told me that he was always away for work, so he was almost never there, and that I could just go there and get my life together and then find a good apartment that I would like and then move there. The thing about moving back home was that it would be very far from everything that I had going on, which would mean that I would have to quit my job and everything else. But the thing is, I hated my job so much at this point that I was looking for a reason to quit anyways. It just seemed like the best option I had at the time. So I ended up moving back home with the intention that I would take the next couple of months to get my life together, find an apartment that I really liked, and go there. Of course, that was naive. When I got there, I started working for a friend of mine in real estate, and that was awesome. I really liked doing that. And my grandmother came to visit us from Alberta. So I got to spend some quality time with her. And I'm very, very grateful for that. Because if I was still living in the city at that time, I wouldn't have gotten to see her like that. After a couple of months of working with my friend, and then my grandmother came, and then she left after a while, things started to fall apart again. The job that I had, I ended up getting fired. No one would really ever give me a clear answer as to why I couldn't go work there anymore, but I have my suspicions because towards the end, I found out that my abusive ex was dating someone in one of the rooms, one of the condos down the hall from the office where I was working. And so you just put the pieces together. He was a narcissist. I was doing well in my life, and he had to destroy it. That's my theory. In the end, it doesn't really matter, and I'll never really know, but it doesn't matter. Looking back at that point in my life now, I recognize full well that everything happened for a bigger purpose. It was all part of my spiritual journey. So now I lost that job that I had, and I have to again try to figure things out. But at the time, I had also been working on my own business for a while now, trying to build it up to a point where I could live off of it. Because ideally, that's what I wanted to do. And since I was living at home and I didn't have to pay rent, and so I could focus more of my time on my business instead of focusing all of my time on paying my bills like I was so used to doing. A few months later, I started feeling the urge to go west and to move to Alberta. So I called my grandmother, who had gone back home, and I told her about it. I told her that I was really seriously contemplating moving to Alberta, and she was really excited about it, and she told me that she was going to help me look for an apartment and everything. A few weeks later, she was in the hospital with cancer, and not long after that, she died. So this whole situation between working with my friend, seeing that my abusive ex was also in the same building down the hallway, getting fired, and then my grandmother leaving and then ending up in the hospital and then dying. This was all the first year of living with my parents. So my stay there kept getting extended due to all these little circumstances. After my grandmother died, really soon after my grandmother died, we found out that my father was cheating on my mother. So at that point, I was staying to help my mother through the process of coming to terms with what was happening and also supposedly getting a divorce. The middle of 2017 was when I moved back home. The middle of 2018 was when we found out that my father was cheating. And then the middle of 2019, for that entire year, I had been trying to help my mother through this process and also work on my business to get it to a point where I could finally live off of it. And it was very, very energy draining and stressful, and my fibromyalgia was getting so much worse. It felt like I was living in a tornado. All this drama was going on around me, and so my entire life, if you've been watching my vlog, my entire life has been high stress. When people complain about that and call me dramatic, I don't appreciate that at all, at all. They're not being helpful. They're not telling me something that is constructive, because I am not creating drama on purpose. This is my life, and I truly believe that a lot of other people can relate to that. If you are on a very intense spiritual journey in this world, you have lived through a hell of a lot of dramatic stuff and trauma as well. We're not creating it. That was our path, because this pressure, stress, drama, and all of that, that creates a stronger soul. Going through these processes and learning these lessons and coming out on the other side of it is what we came here for. And so if you have a problem, as I said before, if you have a problem with the level of drama in my videos, I invite you to go f*** off. My videos are not for you. My videos are for people who enjoy them and or can relate to them and find it helpful in some way. So in the middle of 2019, I have spent an entire year going through this with my mother, trying to help her sort things out, find the truth, help her get her head straight, and so on. And it wasn't working, apparently. Around that time, I was also planning a launch for one of my courses, and I actually, for over the second half of 2019, I was doing this launch, and I had my first successful launch in my business. My first very successful launch, and my channel started to pick up, my other channel, and all these things started to happen that seemed like I was actually getting somewhere. And then towards the end of the year, everything started to fall apart. I realized that people that I was working with were liars and cult leaders and abusers, and so I had to stop working with them. And then I told my followers the truth about what was happening, and a lot of people left and unsubscribed to my mailing list because they were deeply indoctrinated in the cult, and all sorts of more stuff started to happen, and everything that I had built towards started to fall apart. But it was fine because I was determined to just keep on going, and 2020 was gonna be my year, and you guys were there. You all know how that turned out. So living in Quebec, we had it pretty bad, to the point where, we weren't allowed to see family. We weren't even allowed to leave our home after whatever it was, 10 p.m. At some point, I think it was like 8 p.m. or something ridiculous like that. It was not okay. It was not okay. At this point, my parents are still playing out this massive drama, and I recognize that something was wrong. Between the start of 2020 and the end of 2021, so about 2 years, I really got a grasp on the fact that my mother was at least equally as toxic as my very abusive father, and that for most of my life she had lied to me and manipulated me and sabotaged me. So that was the bulk of 2020, and then in 2021 I spent most of the year building out my van. I had been watching van life videos for a while, especially Chrome's channel. I wanted that life where you wake up in the morning and have your coffee in the wilderness with that beautiful mountain view. I just wanted peace, a peace and quiet that I haven't had my whole life. And that was probably one of the biggest reasons that I wanted to do van life. Also, I didn't know where I wanted to live. Montreal felt painful to me. I knew that wherever I was going, that I didn't want to stay in Montreal anymore. I did not feel right there. It felt horrible. It felt like being trapped. I just wanted to leave Quebec, and it was something that I had wanted to do for a while, but I just never did. I never had the courage to do it. But I still didn't know where I wanted to live. So I figured van life was perfect because I could drive across the country and try different cities and see what felt right. So in 2021, I spent the year building out my van to the best of my abilities because I had very little money, very little energy, was in chronic pain, and had no real support from people around me. I did have my aunt and uncle who were supportive, but also couldn't really help me much. So I really had to do it on my own. And not only was I doing it on my own with all these other stressors or obstacles, but I had to hide it for the most part from my mother, who was completely irrational, to the point where even though she saw the van in the driveway, even though I had told her repeatedly that I was leaving, that I was moving, what my plans were, every time I would tell her, she would talk me out or try to talk me out of it. And every time she would see me working on the van, she would give me dirty looks, and then she would go in the house and do something to sabotage me or to make me feel like garbage when I went back into the house. Or she would do the opposite and try to hoover me. She did that also when she saw that I was selling my furniture or giving it away. Anything like that where she saw progress in me leaving, there would be repercussions. So I had to do most of it in secrecy. When she would go to work, I would work on the van or do whatever I needed to do, and then make it look like I hadn't done anything all day. I truly, absolutely did feel like a prisoner in that house. I literally felt like she was keeping me trapped like a prisoner in that house. On the day that I moved, even though everyone knew that I was doing van life, my cousins, my uncle, my aunt, my friends, my mother, everyone knew that I was moving into the van and leaving. The day that I left, she ran to my aunt and uncle and told them that I ran away from home. Let me remind you that I was a 39-year-old woman at the time. She went to my aunt and uncle, who knew that I was leaving, that her 39-year-old daughter had run away from home. That is how absolutely insane she is. And I'm not going to take this video to go into explaining about that situation, because we'll be here for hours. Just to give you an idea of what I was living through at the time. Most people would say you should build up funds or get a better job and yada yada before you make that kind of a decision. And I would say to them, when you're being abused, you are usually being financially abused as well. Whether that means that they are taking your money, or they are hiding your money, or hiding their money, or keeping you from your money, or not letting you make money, or something along those lines, you are usually being abused financially as well, and I was as well. I was being infantilized, and she was trying to create a dependency where I was dependent on her for everything, and that I had no ability to go and make money on my own. So I had to leave there to be able to put the pieces back together in my life, to be able to be in a position where I could make money. And many of you may not understand that, or you may think from your perspective, not knowing the full story, not having my experience, not being me in those shoes, you may think, why didn't you just do this? Why didn't you just do that? And I'm telling you, I'm a very intelligent woman who's very resourceful, and whatever decisions that I made them for a good reason. So I've been in the van for a year now, and I have had many problems with the van, because when I first bought the van, I had limited options. There weren't a lot of Sprinters or high roof vans available to purchase, and they definitely were not in my price range, the good majority of them. This one was in my price range because he was scamming me. Obviously, he was overcharging for a van that probably should have been sent to the scrapyard, but I didn't know that, and I didn't have the resources to be able to expand my choices. In order to go see this van, I had to take the city bus for a half hour, take the metro for 45 minutes, take another city bus, and then a cab. And then I had to come back. I wasn't able to take my mother's car to go see the van, and I did not have a vehicle of my own at the time. And I wasn't able to ask anyone for a lift, because the only people that I knew that would potentially give me a lift were not available in the day during work hours, and I couldn't do it at night because I wasn't able to leave the house when my mother was there. So I ended up with this van, basically my only option at the time, and it got me here safely, and that's really all that matters. I did spend thousands of dollars on repairs for this van, which got me here safely. It's not an investment other than that, obviously, because I can't resell it and it's going to the scrapyard. But it got me here safely. Over this first year of being in my van, ideally or logically, I would have locked myself down to just make money, work, make money, and pay off bills or whatever it was. But that is not how my life went this past year, which you've seen in my vlog, and you can blame my decisions. I don't really care. What happened was I grew into a completely different person over the past year. I have built up a strength and a confidence that I've never had in my entire life. And I don't regret a single minute of it. And I also have a vlog channel with some really cool videos on it and some really cool stories that I've told, and maybe even some that I haven't told yet, which is honestly getting me closer to my ultimate goal, because what I really want to do is working online and have a platform where I can create cool content like this. Coming to the end of my first year of van life, now I'm going to be getting rid of the van and moving into a smaller vehicle, and that's going to be interesting on its own, and I'll have different challenges, and I'll be able to make some really cool videos out of that too. So it's going to be another great growth experience. And I've also learned my lesson in regards to finances at this point, and I'm hopefully from this point on going to be able to truly get my stuff together in that aspect and build towards some more foundational security. The first step now at this point is really to pay off my debt and get my stuff together, build up this channel, build up a passive income, and then after that I plan to buy land so that I can grow food. And I strongly suggest that everybody has some sort of a plan to be more self-sufficient for the near future. At first glance, everything that I did this year was financially irresponsible, but crossing the country a couple of times gave me the experience I needed to help me figure out where I wanted to move, which was my initial goal, to figure out where I wanted to live. And I've decided that I don't want to live here. It truly helped me narrow down the places where I definitely don't want to live, where I might want to live, and really showed me that I will most likely not stay in Canada. So that's also coming up, is we're going to be leaving Canada and showing you our adventures, as in me and the cats, adventures outside of Canada as well. You don't have to be in your 20s to have adventure. You don't have to give up on life and yourself because you're not in your 20s or whatever you might think is your obstacle. If you really want something, you can have it, but you just have to decide that that's what you want. And all the obstacles that you have in your head, these mind blocks or whatever it is, just like I had when I was living a life that I was not happy living, but I just didn't feel like there was any way out, or I didn't know which direction to go in. And it really took life shaking my life up and just tearing it down, really tower moment for me to really realize that I had all the options available to me. When you've got nothing to lose, you really realize that you can do anything. Whatever you feel is calling you, I recommend exploring that. I definitely don't regret my decisions and everything that's happened. It was the best way that I could have spent the last year. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.